Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live, and Mondays are all about motivation and inspiration. And we are so privileged to welcome Khadijah Mia, who is a leadership and transformation coach. I mean, off air, we were just speaking about how difficult it has been. You know, this year of 2024 has come with a lot of challenges, a lot of fatigue, especially this time of year. It tends to creep in on us this time of year when it comes to the year-end fatigue and the exhaustion from the year. So Khadijah is absolutely here this evening to shed some light, to shed some brightness, and to teach us how to reflect on the year that has passed and how to prepare and set goals for the new year. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for joining us on Prime Live.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks for having me.
You know, I think this is such an important conversation, and it is the perfect time of year to be having a conversation like this. We were just talking about how people have been through so much over the last year. It comes to this time of the year where we are extremely fatigued, we're tired, we're running on that 1%. But it is very important for us to reflect on the year that has passed and also look forward to the new year and set those goals for what we'd like to achieve. But to start off our conversation this evening, what do you find is the biggest downfall or the biggest mistakes that people are making when they're setting goals? We see all these things about wonderful New Year's resolutions, and then come mid-year, you haven't completed any of them, or you haven't even started working on any of them. From your experience as a life coach, what would be your biggest mistakes that you find people are making?
Well, I think, as you've just highlighted, to start off with, I'm finding that so many people, because I work in the corporate space, I work with individuals and with academic institutions, and I think people are dealing with lots of stress, with anxiety, with burnout, and many challenges. If we think about this past year, many people have experienced financial challenges, relationship strain. Sometimes people have experienced, I had a client recently who said, I've had academic goals which I haven't achieved. Someone wanted to apply for a job and didn't get it successfully, etc. Or even wanting to study and embark on a certain area of focus. So I think people have huge disappointment when it comes to not achieving those goals. And some of the lessons learned, so I work with the Wheel of Life. It focuses on different dimensions like finances, your academic area, if applicable, your personal health, your well-being, your emotional well-being, family and relationships, etc. And I think one of the pitfalls is that we don't look at things from an integrated fashion. We look at things in isolation, and there's always an interdependence in terms of different aspects of our lives. Sometimes people have financial challenges and obstacles, and it impacts on their physical health and their emotional and mental well-being. So I think some of the challenges could be really not having an integrated plan of action. Also, when there are challenges that you do experience, it's about looking at those challenges as learning opportunities. It's about recalibrating actually those goals. So even if you set specific goals, it's about saying, if I haven't done this according to my set plan objectives, in terms of my aspirations or in terms of my actual action plan, what can I do differently in order to try to redirect my focus? The other pitfall I would think is that most goals that people set are not intentional, and they are not based on values, integrally part of what it is that you want. So what is intention? Intention is really your mindset. It's the energy that you have in terms of achieving something. And it's also finding ways in which you actually drive your purpose as well as your passion, your ikigai. So it's really about finding ways in which you can support yourself to achieve that. And I think many times people just feel hopeless and helpless. And sometimes you can become your own worst enemy. If you find you're not achieving something, it's how can I regroup and redirect my purpose?
That was very powerfully said. Thank you for sharing that. And I think just listening to you, I find myself remembering times where we've all done that.
Yes.
We've all lost motivation at some point, or we've made a goal that we didn't really resonate with, and we did it because we felt some kind of outside pressure,
yes,
or something like that, and that's why the goal is there. It
yes,
didn't come from a deep part of yourself that
sure,
genuinely wanted it,
yes,
to be there.
Yes.
But I think the most important thing is also to be able to reflect on those mistakes, on the different difficulties and the difficult experiences. It's not valuable just to quickly move forward and not reflect. And that's also part of our conversation today. It's to reflect on the past year, reflect on those difficulties, some of the challenges we've experienced. What are some of the techniques that you would recommend when it comes to reflecting on the past year and learning beneficially from the mistakes, from the difficult experiences, or even from the goals that we were not able to reach?
I think the method that I use in terms of my consultation process is really working with each individual based on their needs. So it's really looking at assessing your wheel of life. And what I tend to do is I ask people to look at different aspects or areas of their life, whether it's financial stability or well-being, whether it's your personal health or your well-being, whether it's aspects around relationships, and really assess what is it that I have achieved? What am I really, based on this year, what is it that I was able to actually achieve? More importantly, what have I overcome in those areas? Because, achieving things, you just tick a box, right? And it's like giving you that adrenaline rush and I've gotten there. But sometimes we tend not to look at other aspects and we dismiss the resilience and the capacity that we have from within ourselves. So I like to ask people to look at aspects around what have they overcome in those areas as well. And based on that, what were the setbacks? What perhaps didn't work so well? So for example, if a person has specific academic goals, for example, and they set specific standards to achieve certain, let's call it grades or an outcome or successfully pass, and they haven't achieved that, you would have to regroup again. Identify what were the areas perhaps that didn't work. Maybe it was the time that you put in. So perhaps your time management is something you need to work on. Maybe it was procrastination. Maybe there were aspects of having too much in the other areas of your wheel of life. Maybe you had family challenges or relationship strain. So I work on an integrated model where I help individuals to unpack what they've achieved in certain areas, what they haven't achieved, but more importantly, how did it impact them in that area based on other elements of their life. And then we start working on, sometimes it's not just the academic success. Sometimes it has to do with a mental block. Maybe it has to do with a relationship strain where you're dealing with difficulty. And if you overcome that, it can help you with other areas. So I try to work on an outcomes-based perspective, but I also help individuals to actually look at the resilience that they have. And even if they didn't achieve the entire goal that they set, what did they achieve that perhaps can be the learning opportunity that they can take with them as they progress moving forward? So if they haven't achieved, for example, those academic goals, going forward into the next year, what is it? What is their purpose and values around achieving growth? If your value is growth, for example, then success is easy because you're passionate. Maybe you're studying something that perhaps doesn't resonate with you. And maybe those could be the mental barriers. So it's very important to identify what actually creates the blockage. Where does that blockage actually come from? And once you deal with that, it becomes easier for you to regroup and, as I said, to recalibrate those goals. So I think that's very important.
I like that you mentioned that it's not just about looking at the things that we haven't achieved, but it's also thinking about those little wins that you did achieve during the year.
Yes.
And I think that brings some much needed sense of hope that, you know what, I have achieved something. I don't need to feel as down and depleted as I do right now. But we are at that time of the year where everyone is starting to think about what their goals are for the new year. And it is that time of the year where we see a lot of people making New Year's resolutions, which I think are very healthy. It's good to have goals and it's good to have, a foresight for where you would like to be in the next year, in the next 6 months, whatever it might be. However, those New Year's resolutions, like you said, are not always meaningful, they're not always impactful, and they're not always achievable.
Yes.
And I think that's what can contribute to the fact that we can feel very demotivated by some of the goals that we set. What are your pieces of advice when it comes to setting meaningful goals, but goals that you can actually achieve? Sometimes I think our minds have too much foresight and, we don't set the little goals. We don't make that step ladder before we get to the giant goal at the end, and then we wonder why we don't get there. What are some of your tips and tricks to share with our viewers at home who are currently possibly thinking about what they want for the new year?
I think the key element or the foundation to a person achieving something is your mental health and well-being. So I always say it's very important for you to actually focus on that, your mental, your emotional, and as well as your physical state of mind and your ability to function. A lot of the time we don't actually have that in check. So whether it's burnout, stress, anxiety, and just mental or physical exhaustion, we find that we can't pour from an empty cup. So I think the key thing I say to people first is your cup half empty? Is it half full? And for you, what's important? Because for me, perhaps half empty is fine, but for you, you need it to be full. So where are you at in relation to your expectations? I think expectations are very important. And over and above that, I think it's also very important for individuals to look at outcomes-based goal setting. So I work on looking at the outcome first and then backtracking. We call it backward tracking. So what do you want to do? What is your achievement? What do you want to achieve? Let's say your financial goals are achieving a certain target, let's say for your business at the end of this particular year. But then we're going to work on the activities, but more so the smaller quick wins in order to motivate and encourage you to achieve that. So you can't just do it overnight, but what are the small little steps or activities? And then also, are those goals actually driven by your values? If you say, I have financial goals, what are your values? Is it financial freedom? Is it financial security? What are the aspects that drive you towards achieving that? Once you have those things mapped, it's easier. Also, what impact will your financial goals have on other aspects of your life, like your family, like your well-being, like your lifestyle, perhaps just maybe in terms of your health and wellness? So some of these goals definitely have an impact on other areas of your life. And if those values are integrated, it's very easy for people to actually be able to work on a specific outcome. Then we work with the general standard of your SMART goal setting, which everybody knows about. But also it's about the quick wins. I always say to people, look at your intention, find your purpose, look at your quick wins in terms of what you're able to achieve. A recent example is someone who's suffering from depression. For them, their goal and in their intention is really around healing. They want to heal through this process. And how are they going to do that? For that person, it's not just achieving that state, that end state immediately. It's about work in progress. So for that person, the one goal that we set is getting up in the morning, making sure that they can actually have a bath. Sometimes when you're feeling really depressed, for this individual, it's been extremely challenging just to get up in the morning. So getting up in the morning, just having that ability to be able to manage through the day, wake up, have breakfast, go outdoors, start with a small task. And at the end of the day, you're able to achieve that small, big goal. I look at it as a big goal because that's going to help you towards other aspects of your life. So it's about small strides that you need to take. I always say to people, it's not about perfection, but it's about progress. What is your progress today? What have you done today that you can feel accomplished in terms of achieving it? And it's not always about ambition. It's about working through adversity. I also work with many individuals on what we call the adversity quotient. So we look at not just your EQ, your emotional resilience and capacity, but we also look at ways in which you can overcome adversity and manage change.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think those are some really powerful tips that anyone who's watching right now can take with them in terms of setting realistic goals and making sure to celebrate those little wins that they do get along the way to the bigger goal in the end. But thank you so much for joining us this evening and for sharing some much needed motivation and inspiration, especially for this time of year. I think we all have a much broader and brighter perspective when it comes to achieving our goals for now, but also looking at and reflecting upon the year we have been through, what we have learned, what lessons we can take from it, and how we can take that through to the future as well.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
It's such a pleasure. Viewers at home, that was Khadijah Mia. Please do reach out to her on her social media platforms for any transformational coaching or life coaching. I mean, she shared so much of information with us this evening when it comes to how to set realistic goals, how to reflect on the year that has passed and learn from it, and how to also appreciate the little wins that you did achieve along the way. But please do reach out to her on her social media platforms. I think your handle is Khadijah_Enigma, if I'm not mistaken. Please do reach out to her on her social media platforms for any further information, or if you are in the market for a brand new start to your new year.